The idea of myself being a barrister was a thought in my head. As a teenager, a lot of people thought I was crazy to even think that I could do that. The audacity. No one's ever done that in your family before. I was stuck in my flat, shared accommodation, just living a probably crappy lifestyle with not enough money to even sometimes afford an Uber. Oh, she's still at that law thing. She's been at that for years. I was very intentional with who I kept around me. Everyone's almost doing the same thing. The people who really make it and do what they are passionate about, they have to go against the grain. And it's not easy. It will break you. It will break you. It was a moment of shame. I felt shameful, I felt disappointed, I felt angry, I felt a lot of negative thoughts towards myself. I can't do it again. I don't have it in me. I'm exhausted, I'm drained. Like, I physically was drained, I'd lost weight, I just wasn't me. And I said, I cannot give more of myself. The vice president being there, Tyler Perry was there, Kerry Washington was there, Spike Lee, Prof. PLO Lumumba, these amazing people. You cannot necessarily see it before you go for it.
We have the pleasure of being joined by April Lamai today, who was born in Nigeria, grew up in Ireland, and moved to the UK at 20 to become a lawyer in the UK. She's now an author and a revered public speaker on criminal law, human rights, governance, and social politics. April recently spoke at the National Action Network in New York and shared the same stage as the Vice President of the United States. She also did a keynote speech at Hackney CVS on International Women's Day and was even invited to discuss voting rights for ethnic minorities at the House of Commons. April, it's wonderful to have you on. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here.
You're welcome. So obviously, the reason that we brought you on the show was because of the incredible story that you shared on LinkedIn. I saw your post. I think it kind of went LinkedIn viral a bit, if I remember rightly.
Yes, it did.
And there was a really good, the way you crafted it, by the way, was fantastic, because it really kind of started at the beginning of things that you went through, the adversity. You know, you talk about failure, you talk about the kind of discrimination, and how you overcame that to pursue the bar, and now you are a very credible lawyer in the field. So I'd love to kind of explore that and ask you about that, understand how that came to be, but also like your experiences on that adversity. So can you talk to me about how, like, what it was that you did experience? Because obviously I know what you've written about, but not everyone will, and how you got to where you are now.
As you mentioned, I was born in Nigeria, and then my family and we moved to Ireland, and I definitely came from humble beginnings. I didn't come from a rich, wealthy family that had connections to law, not at all. And even moving to Ireland wasn't the easiest, because back in the early 2000s, there was a lot of racism. There was, I would have old women come up to me and just touch my face and just be like, wow, this is so exotic. I'll never forget the day where it was like I was more of like an exhibit or something exotic and not a human being. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, I would have so many experiences. Our house would always get burgled, eggs thrown at us at the window when I was studying, the N-word, the usuals. And they were injustices. They were definitely hate crimes, and nothing was done about them. I think that's when I realized that actually not everybody gets justice. Not everybody, even if you do call the police, they don't always show up. You know, they don't always care as they should. So from a very, very young age, I had to be defensive. I had to learn how to be assertive. I had to learn that I wasn't liked all the time for characteristics that I couldn't help or were out of my control. So yeah, that would be one of the primary reasons as to why I pursued the bar and law.
Have you ever heard of Vanessa Van Edwards?
No.
She's really cool. So she was a human behavior expert for the
Okay.
FBI, and she's written a book called Captivate and
Okay.
Cues, which is all about vocal and vocal cues and body language. And
Mm.
she talks about assertiveness. So she's actually doing a workshop on it, or has done a workshop on it. And she talks about assertiveness, of how trying to be assertive and gain that respect, but without upsetting people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think people can be a little bit intimidated by the concept of being assertive. So that really
Mm.
stuck out to me when you said that. So I thought, from your perspective, like, what would you say is a good way to confidently assert yourself without perhaps getting people's backs up?
Of course. Yeah. That's a really good question. I would say always the first thing is to discern who you're speaking to. Kind of read the room and try your
Mm,
best to understand, okay, what kind of person am I speaking to? Are they vulnerable? Are they sensitive? Do they give an off vibe? Do they give a friendly vibe? Are they welcoming? Do they just not want to hear what I have to say and they're just speaking for speaking's sake? That's something
mm,
I do very quickly. And that will then help me to kind of adapt to them in some kind of way, because at the end of the day, I'm trying to communicate a message to them. I'm trying to engage in conversation and assert myself for whatever reason. So that would
yeah.
be my first thing. And then know your facts, know what you're talking about. I find that a lot of people are argumentative or assertive for no reason, or well, not for no reason, but their facts aren't right. But there's a level of confidence that you have when you know what you're talking about and what you're saying is correct. And that could easily be by your experience or what you've witnessed, what you've seen, what you've read. If
Mm,
needed, you can say, well, here's the link, or here's the book, or here's the evidence.
yeah.
I think that way, evidence based. So once you ascertain what kind of person am I speaking to, and what is it that I'm trying to say, what is it that I'm trying to assert right now in this conversation, and have I ticked all of my boxes? Do I know what I'm talking about? Because that will put me at ease and make
Yeah.
me just comfortable, confident, and then there's no need to be argumentative or intimidating. I can easily just calmly say what I need to say. And then sometimes that can get them irritated even more because you're calm and you're collecting. They're looking for a reaction. And the final and third thing I would say is, don't give a reaction. Don't
Mm.
act, in a way that they may expect you to act, in an angry fashion, or, blow your head off. Don't. Just be calm and cool, because then people will see, oh, they're actually trying to communicate and not fight. And then that will enable them to let their guards down.
100% agree. I think for me, because I had similar experiences growing up, where it was a pretty rough place and we
Mm.
got robbed on a regular basis. I used to
Wow.
put like money in my sock and I remember telling like a friend about this, or a colleague. I think it was one of my colleagues, where I had this whole concept on my head that if I made it to the shop with the money that I had and then made it back home with the product, then that was an achievement. Like, that was good.
Wow.
Because
Wow.
usually what would happen is the gangs would hang out at the shops, and you'd get mugged either on the way and they would take your money, or at the shops, or they would like see you coming out and then they take whatever you bought.
Wow.
So I had, like, that was really, really tough. And having girlfriends in rough neighborhoods was really, really hard as well.
Mm.
So got into a lot of
A
fights.
lot of fist fights, I can imagine.
Yeah, which I didn't win many of, but I stood my ground. And
Yeah.
so I think I learned assertiveness as a tool as
Yeah.
well, and I see it as a tool, and I
Yeah.
hope not to use it. It's kind of like verbal karate, isn't it? It's like, I
Exactly.
know how to like stand up for myself verbally, but I hope that I'm just talking with people where I don't have to use it. And
Exactly.
most
Yeah.
of the time, well, in certainly in the circles that I network in now, I don't need to really worry about that as much. But I think
Exactly.
it is a good thing to have in your armory of where like
Yeah.
maybe someone's not as um accommodating, being able to like handle yourself in that intense conversation
Yeah.
in a credible way, like you said,
Yeah.
like you know what you're talking about, and also have that kind of physical confidence that's like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm not going to be pushed around just because you are being a little bit like assertive or intimidating to me.
Yeah.
So I do think that's a really good point that you make, is that the main thing to remember with any kind of characteristic in discussion and negotiation is like, who's my audience?
Absolutely.
Like you might not necessarily need to be assertive, and actually if they're really nice people, they might actually like bounce back in your face, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. There was a study done. I love to just always improve my skills, and I tend to watch YouTube videos about studies done about, body language,
Me
presentation,
too.
public speaking. So yeah, I was really not surprised, but it was interesting. There was a study done, and they compared someone delivering a speech, a presentation, and the person smiling, and how the audience received that person. And they had a camera in the room, and as the person was talking, she was smiling a lot, she was leaning in a lot, she was engaging a lot. But I think it was predominantly her smile that they wanted to see if it would make a difference. And the audience smiled so much. They found themselves just naturally smiling and
Yeah.
naturally wanting to know more and leaning in. Whereas they
Yeah.
did a separate study, and the same woman, same presentation, she was just like, no frowning, just no motion, no smiles. And they found themselves just leaning back, feeling a bit uncomfortable, no smiles at all. I
Yeah.
thought that was so interesting, just how your body language can really make a difference to the audience receiving your message.
100%. I also found out recently, there's more recent data on this, that and I'm definitely going to use this one. If someone is drinking a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, they automatically feel a warmth towards the person they're speaking with. So,
Wow.
and I think Vanessa Van Edwards actually talks about this, but I also heard about it from someone else as well who did a similar experiment. It was a different study, but basically they got someone to hold. They went up to a random stranger and said, "Hey, can you hold this?" and handed them a cup of coffee, and looked down straight away so that they couldn't say no, and then had a conversation. And then they did the same thing with people, but with holding an iced coffee, and that was the only difference. It was the same person, it was the same conversation, and the people who were handed the hot coffee found him as like warm and kind, and the people that got handed the cold coffee were
Wow.
like, yeah, he's like cold and reserved. And so
Wow. That's interesting.
I
Yeah.
I always think that like if you're gonna have like a serious chat with someone about anything, just give them a warm cup of
Get a
coffee,
cup of, yeah. Make a
and
cup
that'll
of
help.
coffee, cup of
Yeah,
tea. Yeah. That's a real, I didn't know that. That's really just so interesting how we're wired, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. It was
Um,
Tony Robbins, I think, was the other person who mentioned
oh,
that last study, and obviously
yeah,
he's really good.
he is.
So, um, back to about you, April. So, what were kind of the key adversities that you faced, that kind of really motivated you and gave you that drive to pursue a successful career as a lawyer?
I would say there were a few. I mean, yeah, would I see them as adversities? Yes. But now in hindsight, I almost see them as blessings, because like you just said, they gave me the drive, to pursue the bar. But I would say, yeah, coming from a disadvantaged neighborhood, that helped, because I was surrounded by naysayers. I was surrounded by people who, for whatever reason, didn't like the color of my skin, didn't like the texture of my hair, didn't like my nose, didn't like my lips. I would be waiting at bus stops and just get things thrown at me, be called all manners of just insults. So I was surrounded by people who doubted me. So now, or back then, I was always just eager to prove them wrong. I didn't, I'm grateful that I didn't allow my circumstances shape my idea of the world. I kind of had a you'll see kind of attitude and wanted to prove them wrong, was determined to. I would say my humble beginnings, like I mentioned before, I didn't come from a wealthy, super rich family. So I understood and saw firsthand what it was like to struggle. I understood and saw the effects of not having that much financial help but still trying to fend for your family and to make it, and then having to deal with the biases and prejudice of the world and the discrimination and all of that. I saw how hard it was for my parents to fend for us and make it. So I almost thought, I have to make it. I have to be that generation to just show that the hard work and the sacrifices was not in vain. So, and being the firstborn of my mum and dad, I don't know, I just was always just so determined. And I would say, going back to the naysayers, I had a tutor a maths tutor, and I think he said something to me one day, and I think that was just what just got me just wrapped up. I was just like, I want to be a lawyer. And he was like, you, a lawyer? Really? Yeah, this is a tutor, right? And he was like, well, your voice is really soft. You're a woman, and are you sure you wanna really go there? Have you thought about it? Like the doubt that he was trying to project. And I love younger April because I did not care. I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure, and I am going to do it.
Wow.
And then moving to a different country, like the success rate of even moving and still continuing, the road to the bar is so low. The hurdles I had to face of having to basically redo my undergraduate degree again that I just did, the finances and the loans and all of that. So yeah, these were all things, but I still kept going. I was even told, passing the bar is just, and these are from friends, who had my best interest at heart, but were fearful too. And because they had never seen an example of someone actually succeed at doing it, I had a friend from church who said, getting pupillage or, passing the bar in general is just so slim. I would probably go down the solicitor route. At least that's a bit easier. And I said, no, I'm good. I can do this. I mean, God got me. We're at church, aren't we? And we believe in God, don't we? So let's practice some faith. So
Love
yeah,
that.
yeah.
That's such a good comeback.
It was, yeah.
So, and I think one thing that I read that someone said to you was, don't bother trying to become a barrister in the UK because the stats are against you. It's harder for Black people, and transferring from Irish law will prolong your journey.
Absolutely.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's crazy that someone said that to you.
Yes, yes, yes. I have been told anything that would discourage anyone. I have been told. I've been told your accent, they won't take you seriously. Even being Irish, that kind of tension from, historical tension. Me being a Black woman. And I had to research it today. I deliberately didn't want to research the stat before I started. However, what I did was I looked at the stat after I finished, and it's there are 3.3% of Black barristers practicing in the UK, according to the Bar Standards Board's website, and that was a stat in 2021. 3.3% practicing barristers, and it's incredibly low, like you've just said, and that would discourage anyone. They weren't. I mean, that they weren't wrong in saying that the stats were against me. The evidence and the facts, it's factually correct. But I am a woman of faith. I am a woman that has already experienced adversity and discrimination and turmoil and hurdles from a young age. So I think the adversities that I faced when I was young really helped me to realize, okay, this is just another one that I'm just going to have to overcome. I've overcome the rest. So how is this any different? And if I don't overcome it, at least I tried. And at least I've learned a lot of lessons along the way.
Do you think now where you are, that they actually were kind of positive drivers? Because if they didn't happen, if people were not doubting you, if there wasn't these kind of challenges, do you think you still would have done it? Do you think it wouldn't have mattered whether you heard that or not?
I think they were definitely positive drivers. Definitely.
Yeah.
I'm so happy in hindsight for them. Because I mean, it's not the sole reason why I pursued the bar.
No, of course.
Absolutely not. Because, that from what I experienced, no, it wouldn't have been sustainable. However, it helped. It gave me a bit of a kick. It gave me a bit of a reason to be like, no, April, you have your main reason as to why this is your calling. You're naturally gifted at this, at speaking and reading and memorizing, and this isn't the area of passion. But then, yeah, having people just say, well, are you still at that? Oh, you still have another exam? Oh, you're in for the summer. You're not going anywhere for the summer. Oh, are you going to get a car? Are you going to, because I couldn't afford one. I was stuck in my flat shared accommodation, just living a probably crappy lifestyle with not enough money to even sometimes afford an Uber. And it was like, oh, she's still at that law thing. She's been at that for years. It helped because I had bills to pay. I had loans to repay. I had a family to make proud and myself proud.
Yep.
So absolutely, they were positive drivers. And if they were not there, I mean, I would have still done what I did. But like I say, it helped.
It
Yeah.
helped shaped the approach, helped shaped who you are. You're now, a force to be reckoned with. So
you can say that, yeah. Yeah.
Well, what I think is really interesting is you've gone through, like, I feel like I have similar stories, but you're a lot younger than me. You're a young age and you've gone through so much and you're so successful, that you're just an inspiration. I think all of your story, what you've achieved. I mean, you became a lawyer in your 20s, like at 20.
Yeah.
I think, was that when you passed, when you became a lawyer?
I passed the bar at 24. I
24.
started this journey at 17.
Okay.
So, yeah, I was admitted to university at 17. I was discouraged to go into uni so young by guidance counselors. They're like, oh, you're really young. You need to develop. I was like, no, I know who I am. I'm okay. So yeah, I was pretty young. Yeah.
That was, what would you say? Because to someone that age, you don't really understand finance or what loans are or how it's going to impact you. I know I didn't, and I kind of approached it like, I will figure that stuff out later because I really want to do this. Was that kind of your mindset? Would you say that, like, the taking those financial risks at the beginning at a young age really is the better thing to do if you're pursuing something you're passionate about? Or do you think that it might be in people's best interest to be a bit more equipped with more finance, and go in at a later date after they've worked and saved up a bit of money?
I would say, yeah, another really good question. I would say it's always wise to ensure you have the means to do something. Something as big as the bar and the courses are not cheap. They are in the thousands. It's always, wise to do your research and to know what you're signing up for. My approach was definitely doing the research, comparing loan companies, comparing kind of interest rates and seeing what was out there in the market. Just trying to ensure that I was making the best, decision I could make at that age, speaking to people who had passed the bar, who did they go with, what companies did they go with, and how much were their loans. General research is always advised. But for me personally, I didn't wait until I had the means. I knew that there was never going to be a right time. And usually that's the consensus, that if you then kind of wait, push it back, you find yourself you're always going to work. There are always going to be bills to pay. You'll always have a need. And then you'll find yourself kind of neglecting your dream and your passion. So I would say a bit of both. I would say it's always going to be a risk. And trust me when I say, when I was failing and it didn't seem like I was going to pass the bar, I was thinking about those loans. I was freaking out. I was thinking, okay, I've made the biggest mistake ever. But it all worked out in the end. That was also a drive as well, because I thought, April, who is going to pay for these loans? You have to do this. You're in debt right now if you don't. So yeah, picking a good loan company helps. I picked a really understandable one. So I had to sometimes delay some payments because I just could not. I was still doing exams and they were understandable.
Yeah.
I should say understanding. So yeah.
I think taking like big risks is absolutely essential to being successful. And if you're passionate about something, you shouldn't let money be an obstacle.
No.
I know that if I let money be an obstacle in anything that I did, then I would have probably ended up doing similar things to what people in my school ended up doing, and not really gone any further than Stevenage.
Yeah.
And so I'm in total agreement that you have to take you should be taking managed risks, and as we said before, like the show, like at a younger age you're in a far better position to take bigger risks because you don't have a mortgage to worry about, you don't have a child to worry about, you don't necessarily have a wife or husband to worry about. You can fail quite a lot and come back from that. I think it's really key to make those mistakes and learn from them by taking risks and understanding your sheer capabilities, like, because a lot of people just see the tip of the iceberg, and we have so many voices of self-doubt and external sources as well that kind of discourage us, like you experienced in Ireland, and that many people experience through things like bullying or bad teachers, like you said, bad bosses, bad parents. It can be quite difficult to actually muster the courage to take a big risk based on your own ability. But I think it's really sad, because I feel like there's so many people who could do so much more if they were able to get over that. And that's one of the reasons I love coaching, is because I have a very small part in helping people, but it's usually the big turnaround is when they start believing in themselves and start ignoring that negative chatter.
Absolutely.
And in fact, I remember talking with Nate Zinsser about this, and he was saying how you have to be a little bit delusional in your positive speak.
Oh, absolutely.
You agree with that?
I'm literally writing about that right now.
Are you? Cool.
I am. You have to be delusional. I was just going to say, if you want to make it and actually do what you want to do, you have to expect the negativity, all of that. But there has to be a bit of you could say a crazy side to you, a delusional side to you, where you don't care. You have to not care. You have to see it. My favorite book in the world, the Bible. Faith is by hearing, and it by the word of God. Like, you cannot necessarily see it before you go for it. The idea of myself being a barrister was a thought in my head. And when I thought it as a teenager, a lot of people thought I was crazy to even think that I could do that. The audacity. No one's ever done that in your family before. How are you? You don't have any connections. You're not a typical, you don't even look like a barrister. They're not going to like you. All of these thoughts. Or what if I don't, what if I mess up? And what if I, don't make it, if I'm not strong enough, if I see a case that scares me? All of these thoughts, but then it's okay. There's something, and this is why I have to be so honest during this interview and say, and repeat, I am a woman of God. I mean, yeah, a woman of God. I do believe in God, and in whatever you believe in, I strongly advise believing in something, because there will be times where you need encouragement and you need someone to believe in, because sometimes you may not always believe in yourself, or you need to have people around you that are just as delusional and will help you and remind you of who you are, remind you of your capabilities, how your strong points, your skills, your talents. So I was very intentional with who I kept around me. And like you said, you have to be delusional. You have to have faith, because I do believe the world is created everyone's almost doing the same thing. And the people who really make it and do what they are passionate about, they have to go against the grain. And it's not easy. It will break you.
The other thing I think about is that a lot of the negative chatter is so delusional in itself. So by having delusional positive chatter, it actually balances itself out a little bit. And then you actually start maybe thinking a bit more realistically. But and what I say to a lot of people is, like, if you give so little faith into, some of the nicer things, some of the more confident things, but when like a negative thought or opinion comes your way, it's like you don't need to investigate it. You just accept it, and you just like think, oh, okay, yeah, that's true. I'm not that great at whatever. And it's more difficult for you to accept I'm amazing at this thing. So I think my theory is that is one of the reasons why you need to be a bit positively delusional, because we can be so negatively delusional that it just like offs the scale so much that we need to spend some time, we need to invest some time into that positive thinking. Anyway, we've gone off as I've digressed a little bit here, but obviously, when you talked about some of the stuff that you've been through, I think failure is a really key thing that I think is worth bringing up, because you experienced that, but you carried on going. And, the proof is in the pudding. You're doing what you dreamed about doing, what you're passionate about doing, but it wasn't easy for you. And can you kind of share some of those failures and like what it was like to overcome those?
Sure. I was someone who hadn't failed much in my life before, prior to the bar specifically. I was always a straight A student. I found my identity in my scores or in my marks at school. It was drilled in me to do well. And then, you always come, as you want more is given, and it's not always easy. So the bar was a mountain for me. And during the time of studying the bar, there were personal circumstances outside of my control that were debilitating, that I had to deal with within my family. And, that took the majority of my attention. I had to kind of move back to Ireland for a little bit to just deal with that, and still studying and revising online. And I think, and to answer your question, I did fail like a couple of times. In general, I failed 3 times in summary. And that was an extreme moment for me. It was a moment of shame. I felt shameful. I felt disappointed. I felt angry. I felt a lot of negative thoughts towards myself. And I didn't think I even deserved to pass. I didn't want to do it anymore, because I came from this straight A student that everybody knew. Oh, April's doing well. April's, she things come easy for her, to this embarrassment of I am a failure now. And this isn't working. This isn't what I planned. Maybe they were right. And it took a lot for me to get out of that. I felt rejected. And the thing was, I was putting in the work. I was, but it was, I just needed to keep pushing. I just needed to just keep at it because it was just right there. And I just needed to ask more questions and just get a bit more help. And just, it wasn't as if I was just sitting there lazy and not doing anything. And that was a frustrating part. But going back to the failures, yeah, I remember there was a time I called my pastor. I said, I am not doing this anymore. I failed again. I was 1 mark off a pass. I'm going to go get a job. I'm going to actually do something with my life because I've been at this years and nothing. It's not for me. And I remember him saying, go again. Do it again. And I was crying my eyes out because I was coming back from a holiday and I was just on the plane, well, actually on the train back coming back from the airport thinking, I can't do it again. I don't have it in me. I'm exhausted. I'm drained. Like I physically was drained. I'd lost weight. I just wasn't me. And I said, I cannot give more of myself. I've given enough. I've sacrificed enough. I've risked enough. It's done now. And like I say, my faith, something in me, I said, okay, let's go again. At least there's a cap. You can retake 3 times and then there's a cap. So I said, okay, let's go again. And if it's God's will, it will happen. If not, I'll do something else. So, and then that was the time I passed.
It's amazing. Because I think it's one thing to work hard at something and just kind of go through the graft of it, but to kind of have that kind of level of pushback, it's to overcome that takes an incredible amount of willpower. I think, even when students at a young age, when they're going through their GCSEs and in secondary school, when they start getting low grades or they don't get the grades they're expecting, it can be so disheartening. And especially at a university level and a level that you're doing it at, getting that email or that phone call to say, yeah, you've not got it again, that takes so much, that takes a tremendous amount of determination to go, I'm going to do it again. So I'm glad that you had that conversation with that pastor. She sounds like a wonderful person that you needed to be there at that time. And thank God it wasn't any of those terrible teachers that were like, okay, now is the time for you to give up, April, because you've tried and you haven't got there.
That's why I say, and you have to be intentional about the people around you. When it comes to the naysayers, okay, they have their role in your life with, trying to prove them wrong or whatever, positive adversity, you can name it. But then your close circle, oh, I did not play about that. I was very intentional about who I took advice from, who I listened to, who I sought, counsel in. And thankfully they were strong when I was weak. Ultimately, they saw the finished picture. They saw April passing the bar, becoming the barrister that she always wanted to become. And I really thank them, not just my pastor, my family, my friends. They were amazing. So very important.
It's good to have a very good circle around you, I think. One of the things that I'm really interested to know more about, because I watched this speech, was your talk at the National Action Network in New York, which was the same stage that the Vice President of the United States has spoken on. So amazing achievement. And I remember at the beginning, you walked out and you said, I'm a lawyer from the United Kingdom. And everyone just started going nuts.
Yeah, did.
Which is phenomenal. It had such a powerful start. I could literally feel the room in that video. But yeah, tell me about that, because that seems so such an interesting time for you and the whole experience.
It was. I don't even know where to start. the speech itself was about social justice issues. So I decided to speak on the recently published Baroness Casey review on the Met Police Force, and just the findings were just, I don't even know, disappointing. Are we surprised? Are we shocked? Just change and the reform needed is massive. So I wanted to shed that highlight, because the whole purpose of the conference was to bring people, kind of delegates or representatives from different countries, to speak on these pressing issues that the countries are facing. And I was invited to do that. And yeah, when I walked on stage, I reintroduced myself and I said, my name is April Lamai and I'm a lawyer from the UK. And the crowd went wild. I think I had to pause, because I was shocked. I was like, oh, that was when I think that was more surprising than my LinkedIn post going viral, because I was not expecting. They were very quiet initially. They were a bit like, oh, who is this girl? And the love and the acceptance I felt at that moment was just amazing. People who were on crutches, they got up and they applauded me, and I was just like, wow. Thank you. And that was when I almost felt God say, yeah, what you're doing is phenomenal. And they see that. And you need to be reminded of that right now, because this isn't just ordinary. Not everyone gets to do this. And then I proceeded to talk about what I had to say. And afterwards, I have to say, they didn't show this on camera, but afterwards they all came rushing to the stage. Rushing. Wow. You didn't see this part, but they're like, oh, what's your LinkedIn? Yeah, they're like, what's your card? Where's your card? We need a card. Like in New York, they're very assertive. Give me your card. Where's your card? What's your number? And I didn't bring any business cards. I didn't come for that. I was like, what? Business? I was like, my name is April Lamai. You could add me on LinkedIn. They're like, oh, you're supposed to bring a business card because we need to contact you. I was like, oh. So yeah, surreal. And then obviously the vice president being there, Tyler Perry was there, Kerry Washington was there, Spike Lee, Prof. PLO Lumumba, these amazing people, that obviously have links with Rev Al Sharpton, and he wanted them there, and they showed up, and speaking amongst them was incredible. And I'm so proud of myself. I really am. That was probably one of my most proudest moments, and happy that I was given the opportunity.
What a good result from all the hard work that you put in, from all those crazy times where you thought, oh, I've spent all this money on this thing, and
I know.
I don't know if I can do it again. I haven't got the energy. And then switch back to that moment on stage of people rushing you because they just wanted to hear more.
Yeah.
What an awesome outcome. And now you've got a book.
Yeah, the book is just a snippet as to, you could say, a tool book as to how to do what I've done. I thought I came up with the idea quite quickly, because when I saw just how the reaction and how my LinkedIn post went viral, it's nearly on 2 million impressions at the moment.
Oh my God.
Yeah, wow. It's crazy. And just having people, it brought me to tears. I remember being on a flight back to Ireland and having just women and men from literally around the world saying, you've inspired me so much. I want to go back to study. I want to do this. I feel, the push to go and live my dream and do all of that. So I thought, okay, how can I now give back? Because it's all nice getting the likes and comments and people congratulating you. But I said to myself, April, how can you actually help someone who's younger than you, who may, be in similar or worse circumstances than that you were in? How can you help them? Kind of give them a guide or tool as to how you did this. So it's basically a book about that, about how to pursue the bar, how to get pupillage.
Cool.
And it focuses, it really hones in on the mental stage and the kind of the mental dynamics of how you need to be. Because the practical stuff, you have people say, read the question, or make sure you read the question and then reread and double check this and write 3 paragraphs. point, quote, or summary or conclusion. All of those things are great. You can find that on Google. But my story is very unique. I moved from a different country and decided to take one of the hardest courses and do one of the hardest courses in the country. And I managed to pass after failing, and managed to get pupillage after failing 3 times. Not a lot of people do that or can do that. And by the way, I was quite broke while doing it. So I said, yeah, let's do it. So I've written this book, and I've also gotten a lot of really prominent people in the bar, at the bar, to contribute to the book. And I'm so happy and proud of it. And I'm certain it will help people, and not just legal heads, not just people who want to pass the bar or get pupillage or all of that. Anyone who wants to do something out of the ordinary, something challenging, something big, something that makes them shake and get nervous, but they still want to do it. Read the book, buy the book, because I have written it in a way and given so much secrets and just tools as to what I did internally when the naysayers came in, when I got the bill that I couldn't afford, when I looked at my bank account and it was minus, when I failed, like, how did I get myself back up? I reveal that in the book.
Amazing. The other thing that I really wanted to talk about, obviously, the book is probably going to dive into this a little bit, but you're very passionate about justice, and you've seen some incredible cases unfold. I wondered if there was any interesting cases that stood out to you that you could share.
Sure. So yeah, as a county court advocate, that was the kind of my title at the time. This was probably last year. I went to court here in Manchester, and there was a case with, I was representing an infant. So it was like an infant approval hearing. But what had happened was it was from a road traffic accident that had occurred years prior, all because of someone that was not paying attention driving and crashed from behind. It was a civil claim, so justice in this example was just money. And obviously the money did help, but money can't really repay that. Money can't really resolve that. It can to some extent with counselling and therapy, but that stuck with me. It did. An unfortunate case that stuck with me, but a good example of how some cases can. We're human. We remember, can't just wipe things out. And yeah, it was a tough one.
So when you were involved with that case, what was your role? Like, what was the process for you? Like, as this kind of case lands in your inbox or on your desk. Like, what's the actual procedure coming from? You're talking to someone who knows very little about it. So yeah, talk to me like I'm a toddler trying to figure this out.
Of course. So it's pretty much what barristers do, but it's just a bit of a less, could say, a lesser role. As a county court advocate, I had passed the bar, and I was able to take on some small claims known as infant approval hearings, or maybe injunction hearings or small claims. In this instance, it was an infant approval hearing where, if it's a minor involved, they must have a special case or hearing to ensure that everything is fair, that what has been agreed is the right amount, and that they are compensated in a fair and correct manner simply because they are infants. So it's that hearing that I was involved in, and representing the client, being the child, the infant, but also they need a guardian to be there, and it's usually always their parent or carer, or it's usually a parent, and someone that can speak on behalf of the child because they're older, and someone that has the child's best interest at heart. And Yeah, I did exactly what a barrister would do. I had a conference, spoke with them beforehand. I had to clarify that the evidence and the papers that were sent to me from the instructing solicitors was correct, and that the amount, the claim that they were seeking was correct. And if they had anything to add, any changes, because if there are changes or if they've not fully recovered from their injuries from the road traffic accident, which was the case here, then they couldn't claim money because they may be entitled to more money, because it's gone on for a longer period of time than anticipated. So in summary, that's what I had to do, and it's in real court, real judge, and yeah.
Did
Yeah.
you have to wear the wigs? Because I saw a
Oh,
picture of you on LinkedIn with the wigs.
no.
Okay. Okay.
No, I didn't have to do that. No.
Okay. Do you have to do that as a barrister though?
I will, yeah.
Yeah.
It depending on the type of case and the type of court. Predominantly, you see wig and gown wearing in criminal courts,
Okay.
and more kind of more serious crimes or offences. So a while away from that, but soon will
Soon.
be.
Soon will be.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. And one of the other things I wanted to talk to you about was how, I mean, a lot of people's exposure to criminal law is through TV shows. And so I wanted to ask you if there are any TV shows that you watched that one inspired you, or two that you thought were pretty fun, or kind of actually a little bit accurate.
Yeah, there are a few actually. Now that you've mentioned it, I just thought of one I recently watched like 2 weeks ago on Netflix. It's called You Don't Really Know Me.
Okay.
And it is, yeah, it's a barrister actually wrote a book, and then the book was turned into this Netflix series. So it's amazing. Oh, so good. And it's about an accused, a defendant who basically, I think he killed someone and he was accused of killing someone, but he didn't really kill the person. Um, and he's representing himself, which defendants can do.
Yep.
So that series, that show was very accurate because it didn't really show you the full thing, the full kind of process of litigation and trials, but we as the viewers, we kind of came in during the end, the closing speeches. So you had the CPS, the Crown Prosecution, that they gave their closing speech, and the defendant decided to fire his his barrister, and then gave his closing speech. So that was very accurate. However, I will say what wasn't really accurate is that he introduced new evidence while he was giving his closing speech. And it was a very long closing speech. Closing speeches are basically the end of the trial. And it's not allowed to be as long. I think his lasted for like the whole series. It's never that long. So a couple of minutes, no new evidence should be brought to the surface.
Yeah.
And usually barristers will give closing speeches on behalf of their client. Suits, I've watched. I mean, the
Love
fact
Suits.
that I loved it too. I watched that years ago, though. Can't really remember it, but it's not as dramatic or as fancy. And yeah, you definitely have to go to law school. So
You can't Mike Ross it.
no, definitely not. They'd catch on to that very quickly. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Databases and computer systems are very good now with verification.
Yeah. So definitely.
They saying that social engineering is still like one of the number one ways that people successfully hack and phish information. So you never know.
You never know. But they do try to put a lot of things in place to prevent a Mike Ross situation.
That's a good thing, definitely, because you don't want someone without the qualifications, deciding whether someone goes to prison or not. That would be quite a bad thing.
Yeah, that would be really bad. Yeah.
what you were saying about the closing argument as well, because that's usually an epic moment in like the movies, and like I think the one that springs to mind is A Few Good Men. Have you ever seen that
I've
movie?
not,
Oh,
no.
it's a really good film.
Yeah.
And there's, really dramatic speeches at the end. But in reality, it's funny because at that point, everyone's kind of like, okay, let's wrap this up. It's time, we're
Yeah,
getting hungry. It's time
exactly.
to finish.
Yeah, the jury, you're trying to make it as concise and clear as possible, not really trying to
Yeah.
go on a tangent.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the reality of it.
I don't know if you've heard about this. This was a really old study that I read because I study principles of criminal law as an elective at uni,
Mm,
and
wow.
forensic psychology too. And I did better at those than music, believe it or not,
Yeah.
because I found it so fascinating. And I remember the case that I had to do an essay on was um, a case where an old lady had passed away, and this guy was so a grandson, I think, was feeding her but putting it on a food tray and then slipping it under the door. And
Oh,
eventually, like, he put one under there and she didn't eat it for like a few days, and then he kicked down the door after like a couple more days and found out that she was dead. And the whole point of the essay was to determine like whether he was guilty of a crime, and if so, what was the
uh,
crime.
yeah.
And I wrote about how he was guilty of gross negligence because he was a dependent.
Mm, mm.
Is that the right word, dependent, or is she the dependent? I
She
think she's
maybe
the
would have been
dependent. Yeah.
dependent. Yeah.
um, and so because he didn't do it sooner, that he was
Yeah.
negligent, basically.
Yeah.
But that was so interesting. I remember like getting the kind of the the question and then having to kind of read through all the literature and feel like you're kind of like a detective, kind of
You
trying to
are.
crack the case, like figure out like what could this possibly be, what are the
Yeah.
policies, all that kind of stuff. I think was such a fascinating thing to do, and that's what kind of one of the reasons I got a better grade in that than some of my music stuff. But it's such a good field. It's such a great field. I think it's, like you said, extremely difficult to get into.
Mm.
By the sounds of it, you have to be quite passionate to be able to succeed in that and to be able to do well, right?
Yeah, you do. You have to be very passionate about it. It's definitely not a course or, to try and find yourself or to test in trial. I mean, that's why you have the undergrad and you have kind of work experience opportunities at secondary school to try and figure out if it is for you. But if you then want to progress onto the LPC or the BPTC or BPC, which is bar course, or legal practice course for solicitors, you have to know and want to invest in this and do this because it takes a lot.
Yeah.
It takes a lot out of you. Um, Sleepless nights, all nighters, a lot of coffee.
Any coffee you'd recommend?
I just bought the cheap coffee, the £1 coffee, my local store, and I was drinking that nearly every day. I wouldn't
Yeah.
recommend drinking coffee that as much as I did,
Yeah, of course.
but it gave me like really bad headaches. But yeah, it takes a lot out of you. So it's definitely, you should be sure that it's what you want to do. And even if you decide after doing it, as a lot of people do, that they don't want to progress and go for pupillage, or they can't get pupillage, etc., or they just want to do something else, that's okay. Your life doesn't end. You learn a lot from law, and it kind of gives you a lot of skills and opens you to a lot of opportunities where you can branch out and do other things, journalism, business, anything in government. It's a good thing
Yeah,
to have on your CV. So
I can imagine. Well,
yeah.
April, we've taken up a fair amount of your time today. Thank you again for coming on and sharing your story.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure and I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, we've thoroughly enjoyed having you on. I'll speak to you again soon.
Thank you. Speak to you soon.